fact promotes corruption in the country because there is good reason to believe, and I'll show my lord why, that these bonds are being given by way of kickbacks to parties in power. Almost all the bonds have been received only by parties in power. More than 50% have been received only by the ruling party at the center, and the rest have been received only by the ruling party in the states. Virtually nothing, not even 1%, has been received by opposition parties which are not ruling in the center or at the states. And virtually all the bonds have been purchased by corporates, by companies, because they are almost all of denomination of 1 crore and above. 95% are in the denomination of 1 crore. State Bank of India knows. And because State Bank is owned by the government, therefore, theoretically, my lord, they can, if they exert sufficient pressure on the State Bank, they can find out who has purchased this particular electoral bond. Because State Bank has that information. Though they are prohibited by law from disclosing it to anybody by the scheme. But they have that information. And they also have the information as to which political party has encashed which electoral bond. So State Bank is the only authority which can do that mix and match. Which can do that mix and match. Citizens can't do it. And I am saying, my lord, that this defeats the citizens' right to know about who is funding these political parties. In fact, my lord, in a recent judgment, the Central Information Commission has ruled that these 6 national parties are public authorities under the Right to Information Act. Now, unfortunately, despite that judgment, most of these political parties are not obeying that. They are not appointing information officers, which they are obliged under the RTI Act, so that people can ask them questions. If I know that this party is being funded by companies who are getting benefits from this political party, then I know that this particular party is corrupt because it is essentially getting a quid pro quo. And I suspect, and I will show the figures. The figures about electoral bonds show that number one, they are almost all in denominations of 1 crore. So they are being largely purchased by corporates, etc., companies. Number two, that they are essentially only being given to ruling parties. Bulk goes to the ruling party at the center, more than 50%. Remaining go to ruling parties in the states. And virtually nothing by way of electoral bonds goes to parties which are not ruling parties, either in the center or the state. And today, my lord, this electoral bond forms the bulk of the political funding of parties. It forms the vast bulk of political funding of parties. So therefore, by making this non-transparent, you are defeating a very important right of citizens to know about who is funding these political parties, where are they getting their money from, whether this is tainted money, whether this is black money, whether this is laundered money, whether this is shell companies, whether whatever. So therefore, all that is being defeated. So therefore, my lord, this will clearly violate Article 19(1)(a) rights, and this it disturbs and indeed destroys democracy in this country, because it does not allow a level playing field between political parties which are ruling versus political parties which are in opposition, or between political parties and independent candidates. It will have, in fact, my lord, just to give your lordship a small figure, in the last 5 years, of which since the electoral bonds were introduced, 2017 they were introduced. 17, 18 to 21, 22. 5 years? 5 years. The contribution to political parties by way of electoral bonds has far exceeded any other method of contributing to political parties. Not only that, the amounts are so large. Just take one party, the ruling party at the center. The contributions by way of electoral bonds to just this one party ruling at the center is more than 5,000 crores in just a period of less than 5 years. Now just look at that figure. The limit for spending on each candidate fixed by the legislature is less than 1 crore per Lok Sabha constituency. Less than 1 crore. If you set up candidates in all the constituencies in the country, the total amount that can be spent by the candidates of any political party is less than 500 crores in a Lok Sabha election. In just these 5 years, one party which has received the bulk of the political funding by way of electoral bonds is getting more than 10 times the maximum permissible expenditure on elections by its candidates. More than 10 times. It defeats the people's right to be informed about the sources of funding of political parties, which in my respectful submission and in the light of several judgments of this court is a fundamental right of citizens under Article 19(1)(a). That's the first argument. Because right to information has been held to be a fundamental right under Article 19(1)(a). In fact, in that ADR judgment and then in the follow-up PUCL judgment, this court said that every citizen has a fundamental right to know about the assets and liabilities of every candidate, about the criminal antecedents, and when that was sought to be overcome by means of an amendment, that amendment was struck down on this precise ground,